Who is haunting the Belasco house?
What is the secret of the hidden chapel?
And why do all the old shoes have lifts?
These and other questions will be answered in this episode of
It's Frenzy Frights.
Welcome to Frenzy Frights, a horror movie review show. My name is Gerry.
And I'm Chris.
And we are your hosts.
On Frenzy Frights, we're going to talk about horror movies, monster movies, creature features, and spook shows of all sorts.
Chris, what movie are we talking about today?
Thank you, Prof. I'm eager to talk about this one. This is The Legend of Hell House. This was released in 1973. It was directed by John Hough. It was written by Richard Matheson, and it was based on the novel Hell House by Richard Matheson. For our cast, we have Pamela Franklin as Florence Tanner, a mental medium. We have Roddy McDowall as Benjamin Franklin Fisher, a physical medium. Clive Revel played Dr. Lionel Barrett. Gail Honeycutt played his wife Anne Barrett. And we had Michael Goff as Emmerich Belasco, and he was uncredited. More about his appearance later. Gerry, can you give us a brief synopsis of the movie? And then we will follow up with our own thoughts.
You bet. Okay, so I'm going to spoil the whole movie here, and there's plenty of triggers for sexual stuff of all kinds. So brace yourselves. A rich old dying man gives Dr. Barrett a load of money to prove that there's life after death. How does he propose to do that? Well, by investigating the only house known to be truly haunted, of course, the Belasco house, also known as Hell House. 8 people died the last time they tried to investigate the Belasco house. Only Ben Fisher survived, and he's played by Roddy McDowall, so I'm glad he did. And he's the only one that survived sane and physically unharmed. The house was built in 1919 by Emmerich Belasco, the illegitimate son of a munitions maker. Emmerich was called the Roaring Giant, as he was reportedly 6'5" and was said to have the face of a demon. His second wife committed suicide in the dining room. He was involved in drugs, booze, sex, weirder sex, vampirism, cannibalism, and all kinds of other shenanigans. How did it all end, one character asks. If it had ended, we would not be here. No one knows what happened to Belasco. He just vanished. Our team consists of Dr. Barrett, the leader, Florence Tanner, a young female mental medium, Ben Fisher, played by Roddy McDowall, male, the only survivor of the last investigation, and Anne, Dr. Barrett's wife. They only have a week to work. On Monday, they arrive at the house. Florence said, "The house knows we're here." They do a house tour where they find the chapel. Florence freaks out at the vibes coming from the chapel and refuses to follow the others inside. Florence has a seance that night and channels a spirit she thinks is Belasco's son named Daniel. There's a wind inside the room and the spirit disconnects. It's really weird because Florence is a mental medium and shouldn't be able to have physical manifestations. Florence gets visited periodically throughout the movie by this Daniel, but Belasco didn't have a son named Daniel, which is weird. Florence believes that there are multiple personality spirits in the house, and maybe if they start clearing them out, it can fix things. So she has a seance to expel Daniel's spirit. Ectoplasm comes out of her fingers and starts to spark. Anne screams, which breaks the spell. Later that night, Florence sees what she thinks is someone hiding under her bed sheets, but when she removes them, it's empty. Then a spirit opens and slams the door as it presumably leaves. At dinner, Florence has an unexpected outburst of anger at dinner regarding Dr. Barrett's belief in mediumship. Barrett doesn't understand the criticism. I mean, he hired 2 mediums. Of course he's a believer. Then a teacup breaks and dishes go flying. The house shakes and tries to kill Dr. Barrett, and the disturbance finally ends. Florence says all of these manifestations must be Fisher's fault because he is the physical medium. Either he's doing this on purpose or being used without his knowledge. That night, Anne and Barrett are in bed. Barrett's asleep. Anne sees shadows on the ceiling that turn into bodies writhing in erotic embrace, and she hears sexual moaning. She gets up, gets a drink, and finds some science books about sexuality, and then hears more moaning and starts to kind of walk away. Fisher sees Anne come down the stairs very sensuously and follows her. Anne goes to a statue of a woman and caresses its breast. Then she approaches Fisher and says seductively, "You, me, that girl," referring to Florence, all together, naked, drunk, clutching, sweating, biting. She's worked herself up into a horny frenzy and strips naked. Fisher slaps her and the spell is broken. She doesn't know where she is or why. Fisher said she was walking in her sleep, and she runs away ashamed. Florence looks for Daniel and gets attacked and bloodied as she does it. She gets vibes in the chapel behind a wall where they find a chained-up skeleton. They bury the poor guy, but Daniel's spirit is still coming around. That's weird. Florence gets attacked by a cat repeatedly. She escapes into her bathroom. Finally, the science machine has arrived, the psychic energy reverser. It needs to be set up, but once it's set up and turned on, all the spirit power will disappear from the house. Cool, they get to work on it. That night, Anne gets possessed by the slutty spirit again and visits Fisher again. She tells him that the orgies happened in the dining room. I hope they washed their hands before they ate. Slutty Anne grabs Fisher's hand and puts it on her breast. "Touch me or I'll find someone who will," she says. Dr. Barrett sees the whole scene. Anne screams and faints. The couple, Barrett and Anne, struggle with what she's done, but Barrett knows that it's the house. Barrett's upset that Fisher isn't opening up his psychic powers. Fisher says, "Yeah, I'm not. I'm afraid of the house. I want to collect my money and leave." He says, I'm shut off, and I'm going to stay shut off until I'm far away from this place. I'm going to collect my $100,000 and stay miles away from this house as long as I live. Florence goes to her bathroom and sees someone in the shower, but when she pulls back the curtain, it's just a dead cat. She then hears "Help me" coming from the chapel. "Help me, Florence, help me." And she follows the voices and around the house, and it finally leads her back to her room. The spirit of Daniel convinces her to have sex with him, and she allows it. And as she does, she looks up to see him and screams. When the others come to see what's happened, they find that she's gone mad. Also, she's scraped up like Rosemary was after being with the devil. She's afraid that he is inside her. She's right, and he is nasty. Fisher goes to take Florence out of the house, take her away from this house, while Dr. Barrett turns on the psychic energy reverser. Florence is possessed and attacks the machine with a crowbar, but they knock her out before she can break anything serious. Now, for some reason, they forget that taking Florence out of the house is a good idea, and she goes into the chapel where she tries to warn Daniel about the machine, but gets crushed and killed by the giant cross falling on her. They find her body, and she has written the letter R circled in blood. They turn on the machine, and there's a ghostly screaming and moaning and fog inside the house. The team returns, and Dr. B convinces Fisher to open up the house. Open up his powers to the house. Fisher agrees that the house is clean and apologizes for not believing in science. The ghost energy levels are at 0. But then suddenly they spike, and the machine explodes in Barrett's face. Anne goes looking for her husband and follows his voice into the chapel and sees him dead. She screams and runs. Fisher grabs her, says, "Sorry, your hubby is dead," and together they go back to the chapel. The whole house is clear of spirits, except the chapel. Fisher figures out there's just one ghost in the house, Emmerich Belasco. One ghost that pretends to be multiple. But why? Fisher notices that Florence is hurt through the legs. He realizes all of the house victims had crushed legs or were paralyzed. What's up with the leg thing? Did the 6'5" roaring giant have a height problem? Fisher calls out to the spirit of Belasco. He taunts him for being short, calls his mother a whore and him a bastard, and says that he never left the house and he walked around the house on stilts. I bet you weren't 6'5". Were you 5'2", 5'1"? I bet you weren't even 5 feet tall. That did it. Calling him a bastard and his mother a whore is one thing, but calling him short, enough's enough. Things go crazy in the chapel. But Fisher focuses super hard and a glass panel breaks. And behind the panel is the preserved body of Belasco, who looks a little like Alfred, but not quite. And they find that this body of Belasco has fake legs. Turns out he was embarrassed about being short, so he had his little legs removed and fake ones put on. And I guess that helped make him a super powerful occult wizard. Funny that none of his sex partners reported he had no legs, but perverts are notoriously non-observant. It turns out that the chapel's walls were sheathed in lead, so the machine didn't work in there. They undo the lead sheathing and turn on the machine again and leave the house. Let the credits roll. All right, Chris, what'd you think about this one? Well, tell us a little bit about this movie.
Thanks, Prof. As usual, a great job with your summation there.
Thank
you do a fantastic job when you do that. Interjecting a little humor there. I like it.
Thanks.
Well, Prof, yeah, let's get some trivia out of the way as per usual. Watching this movie beforehand may enhance your listening of this podcast. So thank you, Clinton, from Fan Film Fridays for your advice. Let's talk about the cast. Pamela Franklin, at age 75 at the time of this recording, is the only surviving member of the cast. She appeared in the prime of Miss Jean Brodie, Satan's School for Girls, that's something we should put on our list, and The Food of the Gods. Franklin made other television appearances, including Cannon, The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, The $6 Million Man, Hawaii Five-0 in the episode To Die in Paradise, Barnaby Jones, Vegas, and Trapper John M.D. She was the age of 23 when this movie was released. Roddy McDowall. A whole podcast could be devoted to Roddy McDowall. As a child, yes, he appeared in My Friend Flicka and Lassie Come Home. He was in the Twilight Zone episode People Are Alike All Over. He had multiple roles in the Planet of the Apes verse. Roddy McDowall appeared in the course/comedy Arnold, which also was released in 1973, and he lived to age 70, passing away in 1998. Clive Revel appeared on Broadway as Fagin and Oliver. He passed away this past year at age 94. Gail Honeycutt appeared with James Garner in the movie Marlowe. She also made appearances on the Beverly Hillbillies, Get Smart, The Love Boat, and she was an accomplished author. She passed away in the year 2023 at the age of 80. As usual, my radar goes off for any Batman connections. Roddy McDowall appeared as the villain, the Bookworm, in the 60s Batman TV show. He also voiced the Mad Hatter on Batman the Animated Series. Clive Revel voiced Alfred for a few episodes of Batman the Animated Series. Michael Gough played Alfred in the Michael Keaton Batman movies. As we mentioned, the film is based on the novel Hell House. It was written by Richard Matheson. Matheson also wrote the novel I Am Legend. Richard Matheson also wrote 16 television episodes of The Twilight Zone, including the classics Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. He also wrote the episode Little Girl Lost and Steel, among others. Matheson's screenplay drastically reduced some of the movie's more extreme elements of the novel, particularly the graphic sexuality and some BDSM overtones. I confess I did not read that book. Nope. It also changed the location of the events to England, where the novel here took place in a state in rural Maine, in the book in the United States. The external shots of the house were filmed at Wykehurst Park, West Sussex. Mr. Deutsch's mansion in the opening sequence is Blenheim Palace in Woodstock, Oxfordshire, and the interior shot of Long Room is the palace's library. At the time of this recording, though, The Legend of Hell House is not available on YouTube nor on any streaming platform. Prof, what were your initial thoughts and reactions when you saw this film?
Well, first of all, I got to say Roddy McDowall is one of my favorite actors of all time. Horror movies, sci-fi movies, just regular straight up films. Great actor, and I just absolutely love it. I think there's kind of a funny kind of scientific approach taken with this movie. So like there's a lot of info exactly what day and time these scenes are taken, like it's a documentary or they're taking notes as like to like Oh, this happened Monday, December 20th at 11:47 a.m. So I thought that was like while a lot of the stuff was that was happening was a little, horror, a little cheesy, but they're trying to give it like a scientific air. I like that. I thought the cinematography and the set design was absolutely fantastic. The house looked great. When they arrived at the house, it's foggy and the house looks so eerie. There's some great wallpaper in some of these rooms. Florence's room has this red damask paper, and in the Barrett's room, there's this purple damask wallpaper. It looks fantastic. I think I can't leave my initial comments without saying that there is a certain level of cheese in this movie. We recently saw The Haunting, which is a very kind of straight up, very serious, effective horror movie. This movie is, 10 or more years later, and there is a little campy element to this. I mean, some of it is Roddy McDowall just can't help himself just coming across very strong. But I think the way that this is set up, also there's a little bit of camp to it. And some of the quotes, mostly by Roddy McDowall, are somebody says, "I feel bad you coming into this pest hole. I understand. I wonder if you do." And then another one, "I'm sure it's nothing. Are you?" Another time, "I doubt that. Do you?" And then one I absolutely loved, "We've made tremendous progress. Towards what? Our graves?" Just so over the top and campy. I absolutely love that about this movie. Chris, what are some of your initial reactions on Legend of Hell House?
Prof, I applaud you. Those are some great comments. And I like that because it seems like Clive Revel is setting Roddy McDowall up. It's almost like their own little horror Abbott and Costello in a way.
Yep.
And it's really, really good.
Totally.
It's really good because Revel's just stating the obvious and McDowell's just got to turn the screw. And I love it. That's great. And I didn't have it.
Love it.
A lot of times when you put these movies out there, and some of these I have not seen before, I'll look to see if there's a trailer available, even on the streaming platform or on YouTube, and I think that enhances of what I'm about to watch. So I think that some advice out there, if there's a trailer out there on YouTube, please look for it, and it kind of sets the vibe for the movie. So this was no exception. There was a trailer out there, and it really kind of did what a good trailer is supposed to do, entice me to see it. Oh, let's hit play right away and go catch it. Yep. Prof, like you, I love Roddy McDowall. Good stuff there. Just on the onset, this is a title, and I've kind of complained about it in some of the past podcasts that the titles are just kind of flat, but The Legend of Hell House. Hey, that's a title that makes me want to see this movie. I mean, that's really good. What is this? Like The Haunting, we have two men and two women in a haunted house trying to get this. I love the jump scares, and I like that we didn't necessarily get a slow burn as we had with some of the other recent watches in respect to this. Prof, you caught on something that I caught on too, where we have these captions appearing on screen that give us the exact day and time when the events are happening. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wow, this is like mid-December, and they're kind of leaning in towards the Christmas holiday. And I don't want to belabor this at all, but these events are happening just prior to Christmas and or late December. And I'm just wondering if all of these participants are saying, well, why don't we put it off until after the holidays? But no, they want to dive right in. So I'm just wondering if, I don't want to bring religion too much into this, but I'm wondering, well, are they Christian and or they just don't observe Christmas and or the holidays? I don't know. But I thought this was kind of like right up against the holiday, and they just decided to lean right in and take on this mission, if you will.
Yeah.
Again, when they show these on-screen captions and they show the date and time, sometimes they show times that were what I thought were nighttime hours. And I have to think even in England and in that part of the world, at 10 p.m., it's still bright, or it's certainly not dark outside when we're seeing some of these times on screen. And I'm thinking, was this an error or deliberate? And if it is light out, why is nobody else not saying anything? Because I'd have to think some light is peering in the window when these people are trying to get some sleep. I just don't know. But those were my initial thoughts. Prof, let's lean into some of our more favorite moments of this particular movie, because we both had a few.
Yeah, we did. I thought that the end kind of where Roddy McDowall is confronting Belasco. I bet you weren't even 5 feet tall. That whole thing was so over the top. Roddy McDowall turned that speech up to 11 and delivers some really ridiculous dialogue like it's scripture. I think the only person that could have made this work is Roddy McDowall. He was so fantastic. I also liked when Belasco's body was found, and also when the other person chained up's body was found in the chapel. Hadn't this house been crawled over already by other investigations and stuff, and nobody noticed a couple of dead bodies in the chapel? Thought that was a little weird, but, you know, you just go with it. But the idea of being able to find these dead bodies in this chapel room was, I felt really cool. And all of the seance scenes I really liked, and everything that was set in the chapel I really liked. So those are some of my favorite scenes. How about yours, Chris?
Thanks, Prof. Yeah, I want to circle back to the cast because I thought they were all outstanding, and I thought they just really meshed well together. Prof, I said it before, I'll say it again. We had some of these past quote-unquote haunted house movies, and they are all slow burns, if you will, and just a little bit of things happening here. Not so much here. We had some really good jump scare moments kind of more earlier than later, and this is like full throttle here. We're throwing all the chips on the table, and I like that. I like Clive Revel on this, and I wrote in my notes that he's sort of got this Peter Cushing-like quality and persona trait, and I really can't explain it, but he's just got this kind of calm presence and demeanor that I thought was good. He was very self-assured in this and confident, and I thought, well, when's this guy going to have a breaking point because you know it's going to happen? And I sort of like that he's always kind of defiant in his perception of things and that. Prof, I wonder if this would have been the earliest movie where I heard of and or seen ectoplasm, because we get this in this movie. Now, of course, it was made more popular in Ghostbusters, which had come out in 1984, give or take a year. But this predated it by 10, 11 years. So we've got this ectoplasm scene where things are coming out of her fingers. And I thought that was just really, really bizarre when we have that scene. And I got to say, Pamela Franklin really did a good job where she's doing this there. Now, I don't know if this is being cheeky or a little bit there, but when we first have the scene where she's doing this, I don't know, ritual seance and Revel setting up his equipment, she's kind of like in this leotard, if you will. And I'm wondering why she has to disrobe so much that she has to do what she's doing there. She's behind some type of netting or curtain. And I'm wondering, it's never quite explained why she has to go through all of this and why everything, what's the purpose of all this elaborate setup. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but it made it look really scientific, if you will, parenthetically and in quotes, if you will. Yeah. Prof, there was a bit I commented with Phantasm where we get two profile heads leaning into the camera, and they're both profile shots. And we had one here, maybe even a couple of them, between Revel and McDowall that I thought were fantastic when these guys are exchanging dialogue. They're getting right into each other's faces, and I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. One of the creepier moments of this movie was the different voices coming out of Franklin's mouth during these seance scenes. I mean, you hear this guy's booming voice, and this predates The Exorcist by a couple of years, but I thought that was a really creepy bit where you hear this deep male voice coming out of little Franklin, and she's just mouthing it perfectly. Fantastic. Prof, there was something that I was scratching my head about. And early on, there's a scene at this big, long dinner table. And all of a sudden, the table starts to shake. And we get this poltergeist moment where it's bouncing up and down, bouncing up and down, bouncing up and down. And just before a chandelier is about to crash on Revel's head, and he's at the head of the table, there's a tray that hits him, and the tray slides down this long table, and it just catches him on his throat. But when you look at this tray, it looks like there's spikes coming out of it. And it looks like there was some type of weird dissection of something on this tray. And I couldn't figure out what in the world this was, and I had to rewind it a couple of times because it looks like there was some type of either creature or dead animal. I mean, what kind of tray is this where there's spikes on it? And what in that world was this thing on that tray? I have no idea, but it was a real creepy moment. And once again, I'll conclude with the cast chemistry. I thought everybody was well done with respect to the cast. Everybody had moments with each other one-on-one. I can't understate that, because I actually, when we talk about couples in these movies here and if they were believable or not, I think Revel and Honeycutt did a good job as a couple, and they were believable and credible. I mean, there's one scene where she's reading a book and you could see, oh yeah, Revel doesn't want Honeycutt to go on this excursion, if you will. He's resigned to it, but I like that Gail Honeycutt plays Ann Barrett as somebody who's game for this, who wants to get to the bottom of this. Now, she admits she's not a quote-unquote scientist, but she does want to help. And there's one bit where Revel is almost dismissive of her. Is there anything I can do? No, this is way over your head. I mean, it was just, but then he pauses a beat and he says, I like that, you're trying to help. I mean, that was a nice tender moment between the characters here. Yep. And Honeycutt has a moment with McDowall toward the end. McDowall has a moment with Franklin throughout this movie. They're both mediums, but one's mental, one's physical, and they both kind of play each other off. And there's this snarkiness, though, too, that Franklin has with Honeycutt in some of the scenes as well. And Franklin has so many scenes where she's seemingly out on her own island, where she's the only one having this connection with the house, and she doesn't want help, but everyone's trying to help her. So everyone has their own little moment here that I really, really like. Michael Gough was a pleasant surprise. I wish he had a little bit more to do. That was very creepy. I wonder how long it took him to shoot the scene, and there we have it. But those were some great moments, and I just think the cast was perfect. I'm trying to think if we've seen American versions of a quote-unquote haunted house movie, but it was nice to see a British film. I really like the onset of this. I like how the opening credits started. I thought this was shot really, really well. And I have to say, I think I've seen this before, but it's been many, many years. And I can't thank you enough for suggesting this one to talk about, because we have some similar themes that we've talked about in our previous podcasts. But I really, really, really thoroughly enjoyed this, in particularly the cast and the chemistry as well.
Awesome. So a couple of things to talk about this movie. So there was a scientific aspect of this film versus a supernatural aspect. When they're listing the, Monday, December 20th, 1147, it kind of gives it a feel like it's a documentary, like this is being documented for science in some way. And then different types of mediums, physical medium, mental medium, all that stuff is taken very seriously and very literally in this movie. What are some of your impressions about science versus the supernatural and how they were melded in this film?
Boy, Prof, they really kind of walked the line a little bit, because I liked that when Revel is offered this assignment, he's offered a very, very large sum of money, and you could just see that there's this science that he wants to get to in the background of it. That said, I think the dialogue has to carry it, because some of the equipment kind of looks hokey a little bit, and after a while, I kind of got lost between all of the captions on screen, because they were popping up so fast at this point. I'm wondering, okay, this tells me the day and the time, but how many days have they been there? And I think it was just, it was getting to be somewhat a little heavy-handed. And I think we were kind of towing the line with a little bit of science and pseudoscience, if you will, because on the outset, we had this place card of dialogue from a guy who I think was a medium, if you will, saying, well, this may happen or it may not, but it is possible, isn't it? It kind of just, it's not conclusive either way, if you will. So I like that it's trying to lend that itself with the approach there. I thought the use of the ectoplasm really, really good. That kind of bumps it up for me. But I think it's a good question, but I think some of the bits fall a little short, but some of them are a little bit elevated. I don't know if there's consistency there, but I like that they did try to incorporate the science into this movie that some of these other quote-unquote haunted house movies didn't. Prof, what were your thoughts and impressions with respect to the science and the supernatural?
I think trying to make it feel scientific gave the non-scientific parts a kind of camp quality. So that, it was trying to be so serious, but then these goofy things were happening. And so I think that in a strange sense, it worked for me. It gave this movie the tone that I really love about it. Now, there's a couple of examples of Anne and Florence. Both have, are two female characters, of course. Both have kind of their sexuality is brought out. They're, kind of repressed, normal repressed. It didn't seem like that they were kind of broken in that way. But in, the between Anne seeing these kind of sexy things on the ceiling and just kind of almost being inhabited by Belasco's spirit, and kind of coming, doing sexual things. And then also Florence, who wasn't kind of possessed by Belasco or who she thinks is Daniel, but is actually having conversations and negotiations with him. And it doesn't turn out well at the end. But just how these movies use sexuality as a tool of evil. What do you think about how that was done in this film?
Prof, you bring up a good point, and I don't know if it's sort of a requisite that we have to include this because we have two attractive women here with respect to the characters, and it's really interesting how they do this between Pamela Franklin and Gail Honeycutt. Franklin is possessed, and they make her kind of seem to have this playfulness in this relationship where she's talking to the spirit, and it's sometimes mean and it's sometimes playful. Then there's a scene that is somewhat uncomfortable where we get this long shot of Gail Honeycutt, and she's wearing this nightie, and you can kind of see the outline her feminine form. And I like the way that we get this because she's way in the background, and in the foreground we see Roddy McDowall's profile. And it's really, really telling. Now, the scene before that was really effective as well, because then we see McDowall in the study, and then we see Franklin's hand, no, not Franklin, Honeycutt's hand come into the frame. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very foretelling how this is done. And it was really an effective shot there. We see Honeycutt's hand at first. Then we get the long shot of McDowall, who is in the background. Now he's suddenly in the foreground, and then Honeycutt is in the background, and she's wearing this sheer gown, and we see her outline form, and she approaches him. It was really, really creepy, and they really boiled it up, and I like how they cooked it. What is... Revel is right there. I mean, is he dead to the world? Of course, the husband's always...
the last to know.
Last to know, and he's virtually, deeply unconscious at this point, and because he doesn't hear his wife crawl out of bed and do this not once, but maybe I think a couple of times in this movie. Prophet's there, and I just don't know if it was for the sake of to titillate a little bit with respect to the script, or if this is actually a thing, or a little bit of both. That said, I do have to concede I did like the way that these scenes were shot, in particularly the one with Honeycutt, initially with the hand, and McDowall playing off of it. And props to McDowall's character for just trying to snap her out of it and just say, "Oh, hey, you were sleepwalking," with that. And I don't know if she bought that, but at least it was a calm approach to that situation. Prof, I'm dying to know what you thought of this.
Yeah, I mean, I found it kind of interesting that both this movie and The Haunting have a scientist and some people that are psychics or whatever, to help him. But also they bring their wives in both cases, right? Grace Marquis, Dr. Marquis brings his wife, Grace. And in this movie, Barrett brings his wife, Anne. And they both become victims to a certain extent, though both survive. I just thought that's an interesting choice for this person that's investigating this weird, spiritual / sexual kind of thing, bringing their wife into it. And I just thought that was fascinating for both of these films. And, I think on the one hand, The Haunting is a more serious movie, but this Legend of Hell House is a lot of fun. So I thought that was kind of, an interesting element of both movies. I do have to ask you, though, this is kind of where this movie either, in my opinion, either works or doesn't work, is the end reveal, the height issue. Did that whole element of basically the reason that Belasco is a super wizard and a horrible person stems from the fact that he was really short. I mean, that seems insane. How did you take it, as you went through this movie?
Prof, I think the writers were trying to throw in a little bit of a gotcha moment here. And at first I was puzzled why they were going this way. But then after it was explained, I said, okay, well, maybe we needed some type of MacGuffin or a motive behind it, if you will. And it was a cleverly done reveal. And I thought, oh, that's a good little shocker there. That said, though, when I was doing research for the podcast, though, I stumbled upon a little bit of a tidbit on IMDb that said the prosthetic legs that were worn by Emmerich Belasco are kind of modern, if you will. They were like a 1970s design, and they were made of plastic. Yeah. And according to Mr. Fisher, Belasco disappeared in 1929, so we've sort of got what do you call those anachronisms where the time thing doesn't quite mesh there. Nonetheless, though, it's a minor quibble, and I thought, oh, yeah, give us a little bit of a little twist here, and I thought it was okay. Prof, did this work for you, though, or were you buying it, or was it just an ingredient that we didn't need in the soup?
I thought that the whole height issue was hysterical. Did it work for me? At the end of the day, yes, it works for me. I love this movie. I love the way that Roddy McDowall pitches it. If I had read the script, if I was one of the producers of this movie, I would not have allowed that through. I just think it's kind of silly. Are you 5'2"? Are you 5'1"? I bet you weren't even 5 feet tall. I mean, he's taunting him. I thought it was only Roddy McDowall could have made that work. I thought it was kind of crazy. But what are you going to do? I think it highlighted the campiness and fun of this movie for me, as opposed to the more serious of The Haunting. And of course, this is a Richard Matheson joint. Is this what you expected from Richard Matheson?
Don't know, but based on Matheson's body of work and him giving us a little bit of twist ending, I only know him previously from the Twilight Zone in the episodes and the twist endings there. I guess, yeah, Matheson had to provide the audience a twist, and I'm wondering how the book compares. So, is that kind of what you thought as well, Prof?
I kind of struggled because I think a lot of times we think Richard Matheson as like a higher-minded writer, right? He's done so many Twilight Zone episodes, and his are, often very serious, dealing with very serious issues. And this turned out to be a campy movie. And it is kind of not what I expected from a Matheson film. But then I guess if you look at something like The Last Man on Earth, I think there's a lot of camp in that too. So maybe upon reflection, it's fine. I mean, it is obviously a Matheson production, but I thought it was a little odd. I would have expected a little more high-mindedness from Matheson, personally. Mm-hmm. So this is another one of our haunted house episodes. We've seen a couple of truly haunted houses. This one, Hell House. We saw Hill House in The Haunting, and the Allerdale House in Burnt Offerings. So just to kind of clarify what's going on, the one here in Hell House is a person, a personality, which is much more like was in Burnt Offerings, right? Now, in Burnt Offerings, the spirit wanted to permanently inhabit a person, like what happened to Karen Black, and kill everybody else. Hill House was a bad house that took over people and brought them to live there, right? So it took over their personalities. Hell House was one personality that wanted to kill people, and both Hill House and Hell House are during a scientific investigation. Even though, and I thought this was kind of interesting, Hell House was just to figure out if there was life after death. But then they also took on they wanted to use the machine to clear the house, which really wasn't part of the shtick originally. They just wanted to find out if there was life after death. So they kind of took it a step farther. I thought that was a little weird. But Chris, what are some of your thoughts about Hell House versus some of the other haunted houses we've been looking at recently?
Prof, it's sad to put it in these quote unquote terms and scorecard, if you will, but during your talk, I didn't necessarily have an answer to the question, but I was thinking about it. And I thought, isn't it kind of interesting or perhaps telling from a societal standpoint or a story standpoint that in the black and white movie, the earliest offering that we had with The Haunting, I think there was only one victim. And then if we're going chronological, then we get The Legend of Hell House. Now we've got 2 victims. Then we get to Burnt Offerings. Now it's the Legend. Now we have to have 3 victims at least. And so it's just like, okay, so we're upping the ante as we're going chronologically in time here with respect to that. And I have to say, when I am doing these podcasts, and if it's a movie that I'm not familiar with, sometimes I'll read the synopsis film and I'll let the movie be spoiled for me. Here, I did not let the film be spoiled for me, but I knew I was trying to figure out of all of the people coming into Hell House in this film, and between the 4 people in our cast, and I'm thinking, okay, we've got some great actors here. Which one is going to make it out alive? We've got Pamela Franklin, we've got Roddy McDowall, we got Clive Revel, and we got Gail Honeycutt. So we've got a married couple and we've got 2 mediums. Now, I'm thinking, okay, now they're not all going to make it, I bet. I'd be very surprised if all 4 of them walk out of here.
Yeah.
But I have to say, the combination of Roddy McDowall and Gail Honeycutt as the 2 walking out probably would have been the least on my scorecard. I think that would have been the odds combination of odds that I would not have expected for them to get out. And I don't know, Prof, if you play that mental game with yourself, but if you had told me that it was Roddy McDowall and Gail Honeycutt coming out, I would have said, no way. It's going to, I thought maybe Clive Revel would be the last man standing because he's the scientist guy. And there's this one part, and I love it, where he just says, I can't accept it. And then Roddy McDowall says, oh yeah, you're right. The science is winning. Your machine is getting all these spirits out here. And it like, wow, hey, this is going to work. Nope, it doesn't. And I really like that little twist that we had this moment here where Revel is so defiant in his stance on science and I can't accept this. And then boom, it just, oh yeah? The house literally says, oh yeah, watch it. And then we're going to off you. It was, yeah, I liked it. I liked that. I was surprised that it was Gail Honeycutt and Roddy McDowall. And it was these 2 characters that had a connection and that had some intimacy. And props to the way that it was written with Roddy McDowall. I mean, she is literally coming on to him, and he just totally tries everything in his power to diffuse the situation as a gentleman and as somebody who's just saying, this is not you. I know it's not you. Here, let me give you a mild slap, try to get you out of your trance. And Barrett, played by Honeycutt, is just shocked and aghast that what am I doing here? Oh my God, this is how I'm clothed. And Roddy McDowall tones her down with respect to that. Probably I know I'm going way off in the weeds with this question here, but so be it. I have to say, yeah, I liked how they pulled this off with respect to this and all the different houses. And I think this sort of landed in the middle, and I think this was the perfect tone. We didn't get everybody offed, but we had a couple requisite victims, if you will. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just one, and it wasn't everybody. It was just 2. So with that, I kind of liked it, how this was, Hell House played it out this way. Yeah. And I like how this was more straight down the middle. It wasn't one or not too less, not too extreme, but it gave us something, and it surprised me with respect to that. Prof, I want to ask you with respect to Hell House versus the Allerdale, but I also want to ask you this. Now, when you saw this initially, did you think all 4 of these characters were going to walk out? And if you had to lay odds, which 2, or which 1, 2, 3, or 4, if all of them were going to survive it, or if you thought who the victims were going to be, who did you think they were going to be?
I thought the only survivor was going to be Roddy McDowall.
Who survived it before?
Yeah, who survived it before, and he'd figured out, how to survive it again. And also because I think he was probably the biggest star in this movie, I think by a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so thinking that, you don't want to kill your star, maybe, I don't know.
Good point. Mm-hmm.
But I was very surprised that Anne survived this one. And I think that they could have easily taken it another way, but perfectly glad that she made it out. Now, if you're going to rate a movie like this, how would you do it?
Prof, okay, so sometimes we talk about giving it a letter grade and giving it a numeric grade from a scale of 1 to 10. So numerically, I will say 8 out of 10, and I will give it a solid B, a B plus. I liked it because I sort of have an affinity and fondness for movies made in the 70s. I'm a huge Roddy McDowall fan. I think what I liked about this is I liked how it opened. I liked the scientific approach. I liked how Revel was going to get this mission, and I liked how the cast was introduced. And I liked those captions, be it I got a little lost in some of this, though. But Prof, you said it before, and I'll piggyback off of it. You said there was cheesiness to this, and I have to say, I like cheese. I like some cheese in my movie, and this definitely had it. So I'm going to give it a solid, strong B and a good 8 out of 10. Awesome. Prof, I turn it to you. How would you rank this, and what was your score?
For me, this movie is compared to The Haunting. I mean, there are a lot of similarities in the two movies for me. I think The Haunting is a finer film, but it's also a slow burn and a little bit of you have to really sit and focus and concentrate. It's a little bit of work. Whereas Legend of Hell House is not a serious film. It's a 70s haunted house movie with some over-the-top acting and writing. But it is a lot of fun. And like you mentioned, there are jump scares. There's this is not a slow burn. It gets rolling right away. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of sensuousness. There's a lot of scariness. There's a lot of supernatural here. It's not psychological horror only. There's a lot more actual horror stuff in this movie. And so while I am going to decrement, the quality of the film relative to The Haunting, I'm going to increment the amount of fun this movie is. So I'm going to be right where you are. I was thinking originally a B- or a C. But as I'm talking about it, it was so much fun. I'm going to follow your lead, and I'm going to give this one a solid B, 8 out of 10. I think this is a good movie.
And I can't thank you enough for bringing it to the table. This was fun.
You're very welcome. I always wanted to, I always told myself if I was going to ever do a horror movie podcast, I'd want to do The Haunting and Legend of Hell House right next to each other. And so we could talk about
Good compare contrast, indeed.
Yep, totally. So thank you for checking out Frenzy Frights. Check out our other shows, The Professor Frenzy Show, where we cover indie comics, That Guy in That Show, where we look at great character actors, and our Twilight Zone episode review, where we review Twilight Zone episodes. Thanks for listening and watching.
It's